Good evening, everybody. Scott Stevens here with a look at some weather across the states and surrounding waters, and even a little bit here and there across the world. That happened to hit the Twitter feed, or seems just kind of unusual, interesting, factoid, fun facts of those, some strange things caught online. Those are kind of the cool things. All right, the big weather story has got to be Delta. As we have exhausted the regular alphabet, we've gone into Alpha, Beta, Gamma, now Delta, and continue to press through the Greek alphabet. Now, Delta already being kind of note because of the rapid intensification, landfall in Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. The question has arisen, would they retire Delta so it could not be used anymore? And the answer is no. It would just be Delta 2020 as one of those storms to go back into the history books. But where we are is last night it made landfall. It's now back out to sea. We'll get drone footage and aerials. Those will propagate to social media here shortly if they haven't already. But in the limited view I've seen, we'll just deal with what happened last night. Just with the strong winds, the heavy rains, several inches obviously of rainfall, and this area was hit not that long ago, so we've had an aspect of obviously recovery, but just knowing how to prepare for these things, how to build back, what kind of street lamps to install, and certainly when you're down in these areas, then building with cement is just standard operating procedure. You do not build with 2x4s. A, termites, and B, to be able to deal with these kind of storms. How we build stateside is just leaves one shaking one's head. 2x6 construction just is ridiculous. All right, fire still burning out west. Unfortunately, Napa Valley cannot catch a break with the glass fire. The hashtags glass fire and California weather, hashtag CAWX, California weather. You know, it's just this long, arduous slog as we move through October. Earlier, especially over the past weekend, it looked like we were going to be able to get some rain into California, but the models every single day, not every run, but every day, we're seeing them pull back, claw back some of the earlier anticipated rainfall. That's it just doesn't look like that's going to happen. And I'm sure Louisiana would like to send some of your inclement weather out west. That poor state, those folks just have had enough. It's enough already. Throw your white flag up and call it surrender. Close up from Dakota Smith on the ripples and swirls of Hurricane Delta. And then there was a nice line of thunderstorms that rolled through upstate New York today, Rochester, Buffalo, and now is rapidly advancing into the coastal areas of Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And it carried some hail with it in this particular instant as it rolled through Rochester this afternoon. And that storm continues to race off to the east. FEMA encouraging those once again in the path of Delta to prepare with food, water, face mask, and hand sanitizer. Cash, medication, pet supplies, and of course, important documents. And you know the drill. Oh, so very well. What have been the hottest and coldest locations in the lower 48 through September? This is year to date. Death Valley has had the hottest reading, and with the most days, the nation's highs, 102 days. Death Valley has been the warmest spot in the nation. There it is, even back in January, where they're just bouncing around the 80s and then peaking at that 130. Peter Sinks, Utah, back in mid-February at 48 below zero, back on the 19th of February. These are the locations that will often see the nation's cool spot or the hot spot. Obviously, the hot spots are more southerly, and then the cool spots, depending on where the Arctic air mass is, or elevation, or in settling of chilly air at a very low location. And that's the situation with Peter Sinks. When I was growing up here in eastern Idaho, it was Stanley, Idaho, often one of the coldest spots, and not followed often by either Island Park or West Yellowstone. But Peter Sinks, now that they've got new instrumentation in there, are just killing it, racking up those days. All right, continuing on from the EU's Earth Observing Program finds the ozone hole over Antarctica among the largest ever recorded. Interesting. So then that begs the question, were chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, really the cause of that ozone hole? Certainly it isn't bad that we've reduced, if not completely eliminated, the use of those chemicals, but nonetheless, if that hole is back, then that means that there is something else that is the trigger, that is has responsibility for that event. because the CFCs have been off the market for, just off the top of my head, close to 30 years. Granted, there are places in China which, despite having signed agreements and treaties and so forth, just are flagrantly disregarding that. And before the lockdowns, we saw some of those pollution plumes in northeastern China were just grotesque because of the quantity of toxins which are being released into the atmosphere. But nonetheless, it still begs the question that there is another aspect at play. And I would venture to guess that we're dealing with electrical forces, some kind of conductivity. This I found just fascinating. We'll go full screen through this. And this is not a small event, not a small re-entry. Is it a satellite? And we'll likely hear some kind of a re-entry, unless there's a little space war going on up there. And who's to say that that isn't the case? That we're seeing, because this looks like, because of all the pieces that are being stripped off of it, more like a satellite reentry, and because of the brightness and the energy being dissipated as it slows down, as it encounters the atmosphere, that it was a large object, a very large object. And this was about 5 hours south of McAllen, Texas, in Ciudad Victoria, Mexico. So interesting for there. Hurricane Delta made its landfall near Pueblo Morales, Mexico, around 5:30 a.m. as a Cat 2. Remember, when I talked to you this time yesterday, it was a Category 4. So it has weakened. And with the eye that was so small, it really makes me think that there's something electrical going on. Something else is happening outside of thermal. Thermal probably lags the effect and is a great excuse, with the law of thermodynamics. But as Tesla is fond of saying, once you study the invisible and the electricity that exists in the invisible, then so many parts of science will fall into place. Here's some heat in Brazil. He has another one where there was some record heat. Let's keep going. That was in Turkey as well, from 7 October. And then this is what we're going to talk about a little bit later. California fire update. The models just raining back. Previously, they had some good rains all the way to the Southern Sierra, but that is not the case today. As the count of fires, we've got one new large fire, in case none were officially contained. Idaho has 16, California has 19, Oregon with 9, Montana 11, and the other states with 5 or fewer. All right, and this was, let's just update this and see if we can't get the bulk of the 18Z in. See what it changes. Yes, it even pulls back even further, the bulk of the precip to British Columbia. Still some in Oregon, but even southern Oregon looks like it's going to be on the skinny side right now. The heat out there, record heat on this Wednesday through Kansas, the Front Range of Colorado, 87. That looks like Denver, Dodge City, Kansas at 93, 80 at Ely, Nevada with a record high. Winslow at 89 degrees. So there's some heat out there, and this holds on through tomorrow. We see that heat in place with record highs, then kind of taking the leave from the Rockies and then moving out into the northern plains, and also being suppressed on down into Texas. All right, world record waterspout outbreak over the Great Lakes, and this is what leads me back to electrical. It's not right for sure. How can a Cat 4 not have an eye? And what I saw last night is it did have an eye. In the discussion, it did have an eye, but it was no more than about 4 miles wide, if that. So it was exceedingly small, kind of like the updraft in a straw. So just tiny. So 232 waterspout funnels have been confirmed over the Great Lakes states from 28 September to 4 October in the second world record waterspout outbreak of the year, according to the International Center for Waterspout Research. There's something going on. That's just that's a little unusual, and it's strange because I wasn't aware of this at all until just this. But there were an average of 33 per day. A meteorologist for Environment Canada. That's why I labeled it a world record. So very fascinating that we've seen that this number of waterspouts, and this is where they've been, and cited Erie, Ontario, Huron, and Michigan, even up into Lake Superior. So interesting story if you want to catch that over at the Watchers. All right, back to the extremes and around the country. 107 at Brawley, California, and then Peter Sinks. There you are, deep in that hole. 9 degrees in Peter Sinks, Utah. Single digits already for this time of year. Yeah, a lot of gravity waves. tell me where you are, and we'll see if we can't pull it up when we get to the satellite here part. Here's Delta down here, just clearing the Gulf. Winds now 85 miles an hour, maximum wind speed. Pressure's up from 950s yesterday to 977 presently, moving to the northwest at 17 miles per hour. So it's going to do that nice little arc, and we'll hit Louisiana again. That's just really what it looks like. And the precip associated with that, heaviest in that far western Port Arthur, Beaumont area, and then east in Louisiana, and just doing a diagonal across the state with even greater amounts of, let's see if we can't pull up Louisiana proper, get a little more resolution on this. And 11, 12 inches. The good thing with this is that it's going to be moving 15, 20, maybe even a little bit quicker than that, but not much faster than 20 miles an hour max. But it will accelerate as it heads towards the northeast, and that'll be the kind of the saving grace from the flooding. But as mentioned earlier, that's a lot of that's just a lot of water, a lot of damage to be dealing with. All right, let's kind of look in this. We'll throw this animation. You can see it exiting the peninsula and approaching, and then gravity waves up here. Let's come into localized sectors. Let's zoom in on Louisiana just out of a little curiosity, and we can see, well, look at them. You can kind of see some undulations happening within here, and even some chemtrails now. Look at those babies showing up. Yeah, look at look at those stripes. Come on, boy, some animations, just look at that. Look at all those trails. Yeah, so they're watching the outer edge of this very, very closely. They've got to have a good grip on where it's going. That's just is kind of what the case is. They've got to know. All right, let's keep moving here. And the smoke. Here's all of this smoke coming out of the fires in California, out of Oregon, in Idaho as well, and then even the new ones showing up in Colorado and Wyoming. It looks like, well, we'll see. That looks more like clouds up in the Bighorn Basin. But here's that thunder, that hail that was showing up up in New York State across Rochester. We'll hit that on the radar. We'll get right there. But first, the smokes. This is going to be. I don't see a precip event to end these fires. It's not within the range of the models at this point in time. So those fires are going to keep going. The heat is continuing the drawing out process. We'll get an update from the drought monitoring folks at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. That will come out on Thursday, so that'll come out tomorrow. But in the meanwhile, we're just dealing with just this continuation of the dry events. Here's some of the precip totals as that thunderstorms are rolled through the northeastern states. We'll come down here, zoom in just a little bit. Throw the ret weather stations on, and then let's add radar just so we can kind of see where it is. Looks like it has or is pushing out to sea, out to Provincetown, south of say Barrington, Rhode Island, just to Block Island, and continue to march out to sea. And totals behind it, not impressive. Pittsfield a quarter inch. Maybe there's a little higher totals in here, but it looks like a quarter inch would catch the highest. Everything else between a tenth and about a tenth if we were to average it all out. Maybe a few spots with a little bit more, but certainly nothing spectacular. Another surge. Here's the cool front. Responsible for that is it just, those smokes, those trails are crazy, aren't they? They're there. They're there. Whether they're intentional, whether they're by accident, they are there. There's the showers, thunderstorms, and the severe weather pressing out to sea rapidly. They're just such fast movers that they can't put down a lot of rain. And it's been dry. It's been really dry out there through the season. So as we kind of wind this down so I can get on to my other show, I still have some graphics I got to throw together to get that baby ready. We're talking about point of view. And let's finish this, and then I'll wrap it up with that. So the inhibitor for California has been this ridge in place. And when you have a deep trough back east, that kind of means the other part of the wavelength has got to have a ridge, and then you can have a trough downstream. So wherever a deep trough is, keeping the cold weather locked in, there has to be a corresponding ridge somewhere else. It's just, you can't whip a hose, you can't whip a jump rope and not have the two parts of a wave intact. And this wave out west, this ridge, just is holding strong all the way through, despite the surges of cold air and the lake effect snows that'll happen 10, 15 days down the way. It just does not want to break down sufficiently to allow some necessary precip into the mountain west. All right, I'm going to end that there so I can get ready. Holy smokes, the trails. I know, that's just crazy. Where are we here? Just sub-regional sectors come back just a touch. Come in here. And I don't necessarily want to zoom. Let's see if we can see them. No, I mean, they're here, but they're not amazing. Let's go into mid-level water vapor because they tend to really show up nice and clear in that imagery. Not lots there. I think I've got to go farther north. I got to go farther north back into here in the area that they're sculpting and shaping for the storm to arrive. But anyway, that's where that is. All right, we'll check on this tomorrow and see where this little beast is. Certainly it'll be 24 hours closer to Louisiana, and my thoughts, my feelings are with you. I mean, how much more? We got to end this season so we can kind of clean up. We've just got to end this season. It's enough. All right, catch you in about 45 minutes where I've got to talk about a point of view and how we can reclaim our point of view and begin to observe the crazy things that are going on in the world, just through a little more balanced perspective, and then also realizing that there's some shitty things that are going to happen that might end up being really good for us in the long run. All right, I'll catch you then. In the meantime,